Introduction. Why?
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Okay, here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
Let me begin by saying I'm not trying to present to you a definitive work, a standard by which all others are judged, or the dreaded best practice speech. This also isn't some pie-in-the-sky notion of the newest and most complicated method to be agile, or build an overly complicated and risky method of doing DevOps, which will revolutionize the industry forever. Instead, I am attempting to present to you a distilled, finely honed, and simplified method of improving your professional life, your professional services practice, or your sales acumen. It can be utilized in any number of other applications I have found for what follows. It by no means started as my idea. In fact, I credit Citrix Consulting with the vast majority of the concepts I am putting forward for you. I don't know for sure, but I'm reasonably certain that they didn't invent it either. Like so many things in information technology, the process has evolved and improved over time. I'll say with confidence, I'm growing it as well. So if I'm stealing, it certainly isn't on purpose. My research could not come up with a definitive prior work. As it turns out, this is largely another reason for why I created this resource for you. Because someone should be teaching what really works. However, also like many things in information technology, the process can sometimes be so complicated as to be bypassed, changed, or ignored altogether. It is the latter that concerns me the most, and was the singular inspiration for me writing this book. What I can tell you is, in the years before I worked for a large worldwide consulting organization, I was already noticing that my clients were often frustrated. Tasks that should have been simple became complicated. They took risks from the pressure to be more agile, which they weren't really ready for. Very little was documented in the environments in which I found myself working, and all too frequently, I would be tasked with taking over for someone who could not articulate where they were in a process because they had no process. They just showed up to work, broke some things, fixed others, and were quite often either fired or sent to work in the spice mines of the service desk. During my time with this and other consulting organizations, including my own, I learned how and had the opportunity to help grow various processes of their methodology. I taught their staff what I had learned and discovered about how to have proper documentation processes, methods which have continued improving since I left. I learned firsthand the difference between a professional consulting group that lived up to the value of the hourly rate just from having a better process than the companies they were serving, and the groups that did not. As both a resident and independent consultant and architect, I have helped several other companies hone or start their own services methodology. One in particular had a professional services process which involved over 12 steps. They got an A for effort, but a solid C for execution most of the time. I learned to keep it simple, a concept you'll see throughout this book. As part of being on various IT teams, either full-time or from contracts, I learned the value of a daily mindset of what I'm going to teach you. Change control meetings went smoothly, and most importantly, there were fewer outages caused by changes being made. We spotted problems earlier and reduced costs. Contrast that with a friend who has his team obsessed with the quote-unquote new way of working, an overly complicated quote-unquote DevOps-inspired methodology, which has tripled the amount of meetings, doubled the amount of staff effort, and caused several late nights of working, all to get a project quote-unquote ready faster. We probably shouldn't even talk about what happened when it all went horribly wrong, but I hate to see those resume-generating opportunities happen. I hate to see things go badly, like for that customer. I really do. Equally dangerous is the reality for a misguided acquaintance who runs a small managed services provider and cannot seem to escape work. He and his staff often work around the clock, and they're never really able to relax. They are always fearful of what is around the corner, and typically serve the loudest complaint because they operate with no real methodology at all. More or less, projects are swept aside until there is a loud complaint about it, which happens to be louder than the trouble complaints, which should go into a ticket system that they don't even have, a simple methodology by which everyone could realistically abide would easily boost their business output by 50% or more, make for happier customers, and boast a staff that doesn't rage quit as they have dealt with so often before. That doesn't even scratch the surface for the crushing reality of about 80% of the companies for which I've worked. Their stories always seem to be the same. They have a small team that is already stretched beyond their capacity, and the team members rarely have the knowledge or experience to handle the technology with which they are tasked. It isn't just that they don't appreciate the true nature of work. It's that they rely on contractors to do so, contractors which are usually there for a short period of time to accomplish a single goal. Now, this is not bad in and of itself. I would argue a company that doesn't rely on contractors in some capacity probably isn't growing. The issue is they have a staff who don't want to learn complicated methods. At the end of the evening, they want to go home to their families. Adding contractors or throwing more staff at the problem doesn't fix it. In fact, sometimes adding a contractor makes the staff groan because their 8-hour day just became an 11-hour one. And that is the bottom line. Why a methodology is essential is as important as what it is. To me, there are several reasons to embrace a proper methodology, primary of which are reduce risks, reduce costs, leave things better than you found them, avoid resume or CV generating opportunities, advance your career, take vacations, and never worry about your evenings again. I'll discuss the why of developing a methodology in much more detail as we go along. Let's begin with the end in mind and start with what a methodology is. A professional services methodology is an iterative process that defines the tone and purpose of an interaction to generate a specific desired result. To best accomplish this, the methodology I am starting you with has 4 phases: understand, plan, change, maintain. I'm willing to bet if you work in information technology at all, you are already familiar with these concepts, but it's possible you never gave them a name. Most importantly, don't miss the key word of iterative in the definition of process. Iterative in this case means the intention is for each phase to feed into the next, allowing for the possibility that it may need to come back with corrections. Iterative, and that you always expect the cycle to restart, but knowing each goal must be met before you continue. Put simply, after you understand, you plan what you will then change with the goal to maintain. Then in maintaining, you will also discover new needs or requirements, which leads you back into understand, plan, change, and back to maintain. Please enjoy learning this process. You will emerge fully equipped to take your career to a whole new level of enjoyment and perhaps even bring your entire company to a better way of operating.